The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Short Time Wrestling Podcast on location back in my old stomping grounds, Hampton, Virginia, for the 39th Annual Virginia Duels. Today, our guest, Maddie Schossow from Arizona State University, Director of Operations, one of several women who have worked into this role. It's becoming more prevalent. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And, of course, what it's like to pack for a cross-country trip. First thing, what do you have to pack for this team in your role here at Arizona State?
For the team, I don't have to pack much. Since we do travel so much and we aren't lucky enough to be able to hop on a bus most of the places that we go to. So a lot of the things we buy on location. For tournaments, we go and we get chairs and crock pots and things like that. And then we give them away to those teams that can take them home with them, that sort of thing. So really packing is pretty easy for me. I just pack for myself. So not too bad.
Before we put the cart before the horse in terms of your duties, let's just get a background. I mean, what do you know about wrestling? When did you get involved in the sport? And first of all, kind of lead us from that point to what made you apply for the position at Arizona State.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting story. When I tell people I'm the wrestling director of operations, everyone seems to be pretty surprised. I love it, and their first reaction is, oh, well, your dad must have been a coach or your brother must have wrestled. And that wasn't the case for me. I went to Southeast Polk High School, which huge wrestling high school in Iowa. And my older sister was a couple years older than me. She had a boyfriend who wrestled at the time. And the only way that my mom would let her go to all of his tournaments and meets was if she let me go with her. So I went to all these wrestling meets, tournaments, and just loved it. And got into junior high, worked with Jason Christensen at Southeast Polk, and was a manager since I was in 7th grade, and then worked for the high school team. And when I was junior in high school, Jessamine Smith was also one of our high school coaches. I couldn't decide where I wanted to go to school, what I wanted to do, and he said, have you ever looked into working for a wrestling team at the college level? And I said, I had no idea that was even a thing. He's like, well, it might be. So, reach out to a couple different schools. I reached out to a bunch of Iowa schools and ended up at the University of Iowa. Was the manager for their team. So did a bunch of stuff for them while I was in college. And then I graduated, moved back home. I've just randomly found the job posting for the director of ops position at Arizona State. And I applied. Didn't hear back for a while because when I had applied, it was before nationals, and I kind of knew the timing of everything, that I wasn't going to hear back probably until after nationals. And Zeke had called me right away and said he was going to be in Iowa City for the Olympic trials and wanted to know if I was going to be there, and I obviously was. So met him there, and we just really hit it off, and was down in Arizona a couple weeks after that.
And as far as the three that I know of right now, there's you, there's Melissa Simmons at NC State, and Amanda Dahl at Purdue. All three of you with vastly different backgrounds. Amanda comes from sports information. Melissa was an athlete, and you were, come with the managerial background in terms. So when you see that there are more women popping up in this type of position where sometimes the deterrent to applying maybe they're looking for another body to roll around in the room with. I mean, was there any fear of that was the kind of answer you were going to get?
Absolutely. That's something that you think about being a woman in a male sport. You kind of wonder, especially for me, I can't wrestle. There's no way I'd be able to do that. So even if I tried, I wouldn't be able to go out there and do that. So a lot of positions, you do apply for, and I applied for a couple different ones before I got the job at Arizona State. And it was the case that they chose an ex-wrestler over me, and that's something that you think about is, did they choose them because they could roll around with them where I couldn't? So it really was just finding that right fit. But as you said, there's a couple other in my position now where I think that it's becoming more prevalent to find someone who can do this job well and, not necessarily a wrestler. It could definitely be, but, someone with my expertise might be able to do it a little bit better. So it's something that you think about for sure. The director of operations job in wrestling are few and far between. So when you find that right fit, it's a huge blessing.
So from your collegiate background, what did you major in, and how much of is your major and your focus on education play into your day-to-day operations at Arizona State?
Yeah, so I say that I got my degree in communications and human relations, but I think I spent probably more time in the wrestling room and learning under Luke Eustace and the Brands brothers, maybe more than I did in the classroom. So to me, that experience is so much more beneficial than anything I would have learned in a classroom. You know, obviously communications and human relations, I mean, I use that every day of my life. I think you would use that in any job that you were to do, but for me, it was the experience underneath of those wrestling coaches and staff that really put me above the rest. And I mean, those things that I learned from them, I use every day more than I do what I learned in the classroom.
Going into, because I worked with Zeke at USA Wrestling, and he burned out several assistants over the years. I mean, it was like we'd had to, at one point, actually Melissa at one point, he thought she was his assistant, and no, she was national teams, assistant national teams director for Jamie McNabb. And it's like, hey, can you go get lunch? She just kind of stood there and stared at him. He's, I buy you fly kind of thing. He put her in his place really quick. And Zeke is kind of, he has a lot of duty. So what was it like going from the Brands to Zeke Jones?
The Brands and Zeke are very different. Zeke, he really likes the business side of things, and they're both amazing. They're just very different. So having the experience working for the Brands brothers definitely helped me in working for Zeke and knowing the wrestling side of things. But I have heard that he's burnt through a couple of DOPs. I might be the longest, not for sure on that, but it's our third season together. We work really well together. I
think you have been the longest.
Yeah. we do. We work well together. We understand each other, and we're just third season. We're in the flow of things, and it's going really smoothly.
What about the adjustment from, moving from Iowa? I mean, it's a wrestling crazy state. Arizona State does support its wrestling program, but the landscape of wrestling, just even at the local scene, describe the differences that you've encountered there.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. The wrestling scene in Arizona is growing, and it's growing fast, and a lot of that has to do with our great team that we have and our staff. We put a lot of time and effort into getting out to those fans. But I mean, everything from the climate, and I love Arizona. I love being in the palm trees. I was a farm girl, and loved to go out and four-wheelers and cows and hunting and all that. There's still that part of me, but I love Arizona, and the fans are great wherever you go. Wrestling fans are one of a kind, and we're bringing them out, and we're pulling them out of the woodwork, and they've been great. But it definitely is different than Iowa, where everyone's a wrestling fan, whereas in Arizona, you got to find them.
The dynamic of the staff is also pretty interesting. Lee Pritz is a holdover from the previous staff. I worked with him closely when he first came on at Old Dominion. I was a recent graduate. Him and Steve Martin were involved in rebuilding that program. And Shooter, as they call him, is an interesting character. What were your first impressions of Coach Pritz?
He was one of the first guys that I met. He was at the trials with Zeke, and he was great. He kind of just we clicked right away, and where did he get the Shooter nickname from? That's the first I heard of that. But he's great, and just he'll help me with anything that I need help with. And we get along well. But I get along well with our whole staff. Chris is great. Jamil's been a great addition. And I mean, everybody. It's a great dynamic.
How does your role kind of work into the Sunkist and the RTC side of things? Of course, the Sunkist Kids Club, Art Martori has been a role benefactor not just to that club but wrestling as a whole. And what's that relationship, and how many of the duties might cross over?
Yeah, so I help a lot with the RTC paperwork, and anybody who does that know that you have to make sure you're on top of that every day. You got to know who's in the room, that sort of thing. I help out with Sunkist, whenever they need me, but that it's not one of my main duties. I cross over and I work with Art and I work with Kim, and kind of help out with those different things, especially in the off season. That's kind of when Sunkist really picks up. So, I mean, it's great. And having Art there in Arizona, it's a really, really good thing for our wrestlers to be involved in.
All right, let's go into the kind of the meat and potatoes of it, the day-to-day operations. So when Zeke texts you at 6 o'clock in the morning, because he will invariably do this 3 times a week at least, how does your day start when you step on campus, and what are the variety of duties you typically have to do each day?
Yeah, so I think my day starts off pretty normal for the most part.
With a text from Zeke?
So yeah, most of the time. I'll get into the office, check my emails, do, office duties that I have to, any paperwork or expense reports, things like that I have to do. Then I'll go and I'll chase the coaches around if I need receipts or logs of recruiting trips, things like that. A week doesn't go by without me planning some sort of travel, whether it's team travel or recruiting or anything else that the coaches need to go do. So that's a huge part. I am big into our fundraising. Fundraising is huge down at Arizona State, and we work really closely with our fundraising department and developing those relationships. I'll check in with Mackenzie and Molly with our social media, see if they need anything. And then, by that time it's 3 o'clock. Practice is getting ready to start. I'll head over to the wrestling room, make sure our guys have everything they need, get practice started. And, there are a few things in between, stocking the food room, different things. Just depends on the day, the week, what's going on.
It's interesting to bring up Molly Hankey, who's the SID, and Mackenzie Pavicic. I always struggle with her name. She was at Virginia Tech. So you've got 3 women that are actively involved in the program. With Molly, it's part of her duties with sports information, and Mackenzie is a grad student with a journalism background. So, a lot of women have their hands on this program.
They really do, and it's great to have them by my side. They do an amazing job, and social media is not one of my strong suits. So to have
wait. At your age, social media is not one of your strong suits.
My personal social media is not on the wrestling side of things. I'll let them, cover that, because with the graphics that they have and the GIFs and everything, they take it above and beyond. And to have them do that, I know there are a lot of D-ops that, do that as well, but to have them there to do that so I can focus on feeding our guys and making sure they're, where they're at practice and things like that, it's a huge help to have them. And, just having a couple more females in the room, it's a great dynamic, and it's really great.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Sarah Levin, was recently inducted in the Midlands Hall of Fame, and when we were making her announcement, she kind of was a de facto director of ops before the director of ops. Before, it wasn't just a manager in that situation, because there's so many more things that you see people like that. I mean, do you feel like you were almost like a mini director of ops at Iowa, and that kind of, braced you for Zeke Jones, so to speak?
Absolutely. I think, Luke gave me so much responsibility and just really helped mold me into a director of ops. So I did, and I did so much at Iowa. And I was like an assistant to Luke. Whatever Luke needed, I helped him out with, and, video, food, things like that, laundry, all those things. And I don't have a manager at Arizona State, so I do all of that plus everything else now. So to have, somebody just on me and giving me that huge responsibility as a student definitely made me, the director of ops I am now.
When you look at the amount of women in wrestling, women's wrestling is growing. The advocacy for women in leadership, not just within wrestling, but at the NCAA level. And the chair of the Division I Wrestling Committee, Karen Langston, she's a woman and associate AD at CSU Bakersfield. So, do you really think about it much that what you and Amanda and Melissa and Clarissa Chun before you, she was also director of ops at West Virginia for a bit, what you guys are doing, the impact that you have on other women who want to work in the sport but have always felt there may be this, there was a gender barrier?
Yeah, I have been lucky enough to never really feel that gender barrier. I've always been respected and really treated equally by everybody I've worked with, athletes, coaches alike. But it has been recently, with the with having Grandview have a program and women's program coming up, and all this sport growing. I think it's amazing, and having their sport grow, I think will only help get more and more women into this field. So I think it's great, and Grandview's just down the road from where I grew up. So to have them have a women's wrestling team is, I think, going to be amazing.
A lot of women have come through and trained at Arizona State. I mean, obviously, you don't make the decisions here, but how likely do you think it is in the cards that there will be Sun Devil women's wrestling in the future?
I really hope that there is. I know that it's something that has been talked about in the past, and I think that if we could just get the ball rolling, I think it'll be amazing. We've got Vicky and we've got Kelsey, and then all the other women athletes that come in on different weeks and train with them. We've got Marley Smith, who's actually on our roster, so a female wrestler on a male sport roster. It's just it's really great, and our senior administrators are so supportive of all the things that we want to do, and that is something that I hope does come our way.
Do you feel there's any pressure on the three of you, especially in terms of this being a woman in director of ops positions? Because like we said earlier, a lot of people hire that for extra bodies to get an extra coach, quote unquote coach, air quotes. And you feel that your performance is kind of maybe under a microscope a little bit. It's like, well, we might consider adding a female in this position, but we want to see how they work at other places. I mean, if you can work for Zeke, you can work for pretty much anybody. But do you think you guys are kind of like the litmus test for everybody else?
I think, that might be the case. I think, Melissa, she has her wrestling experience, and just like I have my experience at Iowa, I think having the past experience, it will definitely help for future endeavors, and, working for them. I think maybe a little bit, but nowadays they have so many different roles for coaches. You can have volunteer coaches, you have RTC, club coaches, things like that. So I think that I think it's great that we can be in that role, and there are other opportunities for other coaches and things like that without having to also be a DOPS.
When it comes to putting out fires, it usually it's usually delegated responsibility. What was one of the first fires you had to put out for Zeke Jones?
Oh gosh, let me think. I might need to think on that for a little bit. The first fires.
Well, let's think about what's the most recent fire you've had to put out. Maybe that'll jog the memory a little bit. Jog or jug? I don't know.
Jog the memory.
I think it's a soft J. Yogging.
I think just the most common one is last minute travel. I think all the coaches deal with this at some point. There's a recruit that you just talked to and wants to commit tomorrow, and it's 9 p.m. at night, and you got to go on and get a flight for them the next day. That was big. We try to get that done as quickly as we can. Lately there haven't been many fires to put out, so knock on wood. We've been good, but I also think that this is my third season. I'm kind of getting into the swing of things, getting more comfortable. So those fires are becoming few and far between, which I'm gonna just not like saying that because I know now one's going to come up, but it's been pretty good.
Little I guess questions of the Hampton nature. What do you think of that about the Virginia duels, and do you like coming here?
I do. This is one of my favorite tournaments. Operationally, it's really easy. It's a dual meet, not a tournament. I can know exactly when the guys are going to eat, weigh in, when to get them food, when to take them back and forth to the hotel. I think it's a great tournament, and it's one that we enjoy coming to every year. And it keeps getting better and better every year. So I really enjoy it.
Do you get a chance? I have kind of a rule. I grew up here, so I don't eat seafood west of Richmond, Virginia. So it's kind of like the thing. So in Iowa, I'm not eating seafood. In Arizona, maybe. It's next to California. You can probably get it in pretty quick. Just have a rule. Do you sample the seafood when you come out here?
Absolutely. So we have I don't even remember what the place is called, but we had a place we went to the last 2 years. And we went to another place last night, the Twisted Crab, and it was so good. We had crawfish and shrimp and snow crab and just everything. And they brought it out in buckets, and we just had our gloves on and just ate it, and it was delicious. But I love seafood. So yeah, when I come to the East Coast or when we go over to California, I definitely try to get as much as I can, because Arizona, it's pretty good, but not quite like when you're on the coast.
Here it's legitimately like off the boat. And considering here, like, first of all, I also want to know, like, from you got all these tournaments, you get access, hospitality rooms. How do you think the Virginia Duels stacks up?
I think you already know the answer to that question. It's the best. I'm not a healthy eater. I have probably the worst diet. I just ate some chicken nuggets and McDonald's so I don't have the best diet, so when I come here, I know it's going to be comfort food that always has good mac and cheese and potato salad, and it's good, not just nachos or whatever, the other places have, but this hospitality is top notch here.
Yeah, because on Saturday night, there's the giant seafood feast with clams, just seafood everywhere. So that's the one thing. My dad actually comes up here to watch. My high school is in this thing every single year. So he goes and watches the old high school team, and him and I have dinner here every year. It's become our tradition. So, I mean, he's a guy who hasn't bought a piece of fish from the store in like 40 years. He's always catches everything. So high regards. Now, as we get through this part of the season, dealing with the attached wrestlers, unattached wrestlers, Anthony Valencia is back. Tanner Hall's been redshirting. So when you have to deal with that type of paperwork stuff, weigh-ins, official matches and whatnot, I mean, what are some of the nuances that you've had to learn more about with the sport of wrestling being in this role?
Something that I didn't really deal with when I was at Iowa was the unattached wrestlers. I didn't really have anything, to do with the paperwork or kind of how that worked. I just worked with our guys that were on the the top spots. So learning that has been huge. They're still in our room. They're working out with us, things like that. But when they go to open tournaments and things like that, I want to be, what do you want? Do you want food or anything? And I have to take a step back and be like, oh, I can't do any of that for you guys. So that's a nuance, not being able to feed them, give them rides, help coordinate their travel, things like that I can't do, that I wish I could, and those guys who were on our top spots last year and, now they are redshirting. I think they're feeling that too. They have to do it all on their own. And I think they kind of miss me a little. But that is one thing that I deal with. And then again, the different RTC rules, learning those has been, a learning curve with the RTC, but I think that it's great.
Oh, one thing too, Tanner Hall, he's old enough to rent a car in his own name too.
He's actually older than me. He's like 6 months older than I am.
Yeah, I think he's about to turn 26, if I'm not mistaken. So, Maddie Schossow, I think I got that right again now. Schossow.
Yep.
Thank you for your time, and it's always cool to watch the journey that you, Melissa, and Amanda specifically that I'm kind of featuring here, because if there's any other women's director of ops out there, please let me know. I want to make a list and see what we can do here. But always good seeing you at Virginia Duels, and you do a great job, and thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MatTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to this show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you already listen and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, MatTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.